This is the CHGO Cubs Podcast. My name is Corey. I am joined, as always, by Dr. Brendan Miller.
Look at that.
We are coming to you on Sunday. It is June 23rd, and the 9-game homestand has come and gone. Brendan, we called upon it to be the moment for the Chicago Cubs to turn things around, show us what they're made of, really cement that they were going to turn this season around. And what we get is 2 series losses, a series win over the Giants earlier this week by the thinnest of hairs, and a series loss here to the Mets, 4-5 on this 9-game homestand. As we mentioned before, all against teams that they are right in the thick of it with for that NL wildcard race. And Brendan, as we talked about a lot in terms of not taking care of your own business, the 2 teams you lost series to on this homestand, the St. Louis Cardinals and the New York Mets, guess who now sitting a couple games ahead of you in that wild card race? Both of those teams. So not good enough for this homestand, I don't think. But let me know how you're feeling tonight.
That's the annoying aspect of this entire situation. They're playing poorly, underperforming, but they're still technically within this bulk race where 7 teams are within 2-3 games of that wild card spot. And it's early, right? Of course it's early, but the trade deadline is 4 to 5 weeks away from heating up. And those discussions of who's on the deadline, who's not on the market, who is on the market are going to continue to be unclear. And we're in this purgatory state. The only thing we can do is hope that a lot of the trends we're watching end up manifesting into offense. Some of the good trends and some of the bad trends, like Shota's recent funk, Assad's inability to go past 4 or 5 innings, that it doesn't go to a point where it makes the entire roster worse if the offense does start to emerge. It's a difficult situation. It's frustrating. I feel to some degree we're in purgatory right now, Corey.
Yeah, so we got a lot to talk about tonight. Welcome into the Sunday edition of the CHGO Cubs Podcast. Appreciate you joining. If you're watching live on YouTube, hello, hop in the chat. Let us know what you're thinking. If you're listening later on your podcast feeds or watching later on YouTube, drop a comment. We appreciate you. Happy to have you here, especially after Sunday Night Baseball. Always happy to have folks tuning in and prolonging their evening with the Chicago Cubs. It's a choice, Brendan. You and I, sort of, I guess, make the choice.
No, this is a choice.
But
we're that dumb.
It's we're all making a conscious effort here to continue our time spent with the 2024
No one's forced you to do a
Cubs.
podcast with me for the past 9 years, Corey.
Oh, okay.
No
All
one's
right,
forced
bye.
you to do that. No, hold on. I'm not doing the show by myself.
So I do want to. Here's the thing. Brendan and I were talking before we came on. We're going to talk about the homestand, about these series. We on the Sunday edition, we look back at the week that was. I think we'll include the entire homestand, but we'll specifically look at that early week series against the Giants, this weekend against the Mets. We have spent a lot of the last few episodes kind of doing the whole, this team needs to be better. We complained about the offense in the offseason, and now we're
84
seeing
84 wins is not good enough. Yada,
yes.
yada, yada.
So I don't want to have a full hour of kind of the same general team discussion, roster building stuff. We've done it in great depth, in great length. The whole CHGO Cubs team, but also specifically Brendan and I. And I do want to talk some specifics. Jamison Taillon was really good. Again, possibly his best start as a Cub, maybe not that one in New York.
10
but
strikeouts.
This was up there, and a different Taillon, even that he's been good all year, but the peripherals weren't matching necessarily his results. The start this weekend on Saturday, though, let's talk about that. Want to talk about Javier Assad, another short start, his ERA in the month of June, not where you want it to be. He's approaching some innings territories, so talking about those things. Leiter Jr. hitting the injured list, which is great. Just what everybody wanted. The 3 guys you relied on all year last year as your only reliable members of your bullpen, all injured. So good luck to everybody involved. Want to talk about that. We'll talk about some other stuff. Drop what you're thinking in the comments. To start, though, Brendan, I'm seeing a lot of similar sentiments in our YouTube chat and in the comments here. People are kind of, I don't want to say they're giving up, because as we've talked about a lot, it's a weird spot. This team is very frustrating. The games are sometimes excruciating, very predictable in a lot of ways. But there they sit 2 games out of a wild card spot. Now, granted, everybody but 2 teams in the National League is basically in that wild card race. There's 2 teams at the bottom, and everybody else is separated by 2 or 3 games. But it's always a weird discussion to square when we're watching it and that, we're like, okay, well, this is awful. They've been one of the worst offenses in the league for almost, 2 calendar months, but they could be a playoff team. I don't really know how to square it. But what I do want to start with, though, is this was a 9-game homestand. I saw it earlier in the YouTube chat from Lou TS, saying 9-11 in their last 20 against teams under 500. And you saw basically that entire thing throughout this 9-game homestand. Now, the Cardinals are over 500 now. They were not when you played them at Wrigley Field, though. So this whole homestand was teams under 500, right in that same spot with you in that wild card race. And outside of mercifully pulling off that last game against the Giants, which somehow they flirted with losing, even though they carried a 5-1 lead through most of that game.
Yeah,
you were an inch away from losing all 3 series. And so instead of planting your flag, playing better baseball, and using this 9-game homestand to kind of push you towards the month of July and feel a little better, feels like a wasted opportunity, Brendan. This was an opportunity to win some series and play better baseball, and you didn't really do that. And instead, what you did is let a couple teams in the Cardinals and Giants, the Cardinals and Mets come in and kind of do just that, but over you in your own ballpark, in front of Ryne Sandberg, no less, as his statue is unveiled, the 1984 team there, and, you laid a big egg on Sunday night.
The sentiment is growing to past a point of what's going on to kind of acceptance that this team is kind of what it is, that it was built with flaws.
Yeah.
It was built with the possibility of what we're seeing happening. And I feel as if as a fan base, we're kind of getting to that point where if it turns around, that turnaround is going to be surprising. Yeah, they were 9-11 in their last 20 games with teams against under 500. Unacceptable. Of course, unacceptable. But what can you do at this point? We've been talking about this team in the same light for 2 months. So the question then becomes, yes, those opportunities were missed, but what needs to happen to capture the future opportunities that are still there, even if it appears as if them capturing those opportunities are unlikely? So when I watch these games, I'm zoning in on Cody Bellinger, on Seiya Suzuki, on Christopher Morel, those 3 guys. I'm happy that Michael Busch is continuing to play well. I'm optimistic Dansby Swanson's emerging from that lower early season funk, but really I need those 3 sluggers in the middle of the order, Seiya, Cody, and Morel, to hit dramatically better than their current output right now. Bellinger, a 330 weighted on base average. Seiya, around a 350 weighted on base average. And Morel now inching towards around a 310 weighted on base average, which with his multiple home runs. It's not good enough. The entire team can go through a funk. Dansby, Nico, and so on. They can bat below below league average or slightly towards that line. But what can't happen is your perceived big boppers, 3, 4, 5 hitters, not perform at those expected levels. Until that happens, the frustration with the other players is moot. I need to see now, not in 2 weeks, 3 weeks, 4 weeks. I need to see now Bellinger, Seiya, and Morel perform as those 3, 4, 5 hitters. And that might not even be realistic. That might not even be what their roles are for them. But the situation is those 3 guys have to hit at those levels to be talking about those opportunities in the distance and immediate future being captured.
Yeah, I mean, look, we talked about this all offseason. One of the main concerns was that you were taking some calculated risks. The Michael Busch trade and the decision to give him a long runway at first base or DH or wherever he happens to be playing looks to be paying off.
It's paying off.
He's had a very nice season for a guy getting his first extended run of big league time. It might have dipped under, tonight, but he was hovering around an 800 OPS. Like, it looks
Defense
good.
looks much better.
Better,
More good
improving,
plays this
yes.
week. Yeah.
The Christopher Morel situation, both on offense and defense, calculated risk. He's 24. We've talked about that in depth for hours, I feel like, throughout this season. PCA coming up, another calculated risk. He's 22 years old. He's never got an extended run at the big league level, and he was getting it, because of injuries and because he got hot in AAA. But you saw last year he struggled at the plate. You knew there was going to be adjustments to be made. So you're taking all of those risks. If you're going to do that, the known commodities must be known commodities. And really, outside of Ian Happ, who has gotten hot and pushed his numbers to, I believe, even above his career average levels, it's you can look this isn't a blame game, but if you're going to take those risks and you're going to allow guys like Morel or PCA or even Busch, when he struggled after his red hot start, to have that appropriate time, which they need as guys that are young or guys that are getting their first long leash at the big league level, Cody Bellinger has to be the guy that you're paying him to be. It doesn't work. Otherwise, Dansby Swanson, he's pushing those numbers back up there, but all this season has been below the norm that he's put up throughout his career, which is only barely above league average anyway at the plate. Same with Nico, who's been dealing with injuries and things like that, but those known commodities must be at that level or greater, or this plan kind of falls through, which is why we didn't like the plan and said that this was too risky, and we're not happy that they were taking this many risks and relying on unproven things. It's frustrating. But again, as we talked about, I think it was three weeks ago, maybe, we did our kind of like big look. It's not surprising. This was always one of the possibilities, and the ebb and flow of it isn't really that surprising. I am seeing a lot of this in the YouTube chat, Brendan, and I don't have like the numbers to kind of like dig into this, and maybe it's something that we can do. I do agree with a large portion of the chat, though. Like, this team does feel like it lacks fire. It feels passive at the plate. I feel like we watch a lot of called strikeouts on hittable pitches. I feel like every time I'm in the studio, like Cody and I and Luke and Ryan are remarking about how many hittable meatball pitches they seem to just stare at or foul off, just not seem super prepared to attack on. And, I know you were tweeting about it the other day, the bad calls from the umpire, they kind of just go, okay, back to the dugout. Like, getting ejected doesn't solve anything. Throwing trash cans isn't the answer. But it is interesting to read in the YouTube chat so many people sharing the sentiment unprompted. We weren't even on air yet, that they feel like this team is kind of flat and just like passive, and not there's just a fire that maybe seems to be missing from this team. And I don't really have the answer as to why that is or what that is. I assume it's because they're playing poorly and they're not having a great time. But it does kind of feel that way. And then, you just look at some of the traits of this offense. Like, on Friday, they struck out 13 times in that game. On Sunday night, they struck out 14 times. It's a lot of strikeouts, Brendan. And you're looking up and down the order. I think right now you have one hitter with an OPS over 800. I think it's Michael Busch, but I'd have to look. I don't know, man. It feels like we've been spinning wheels on a very similar discussion for weeks. And I had hoped that this homestand would turn things around. I had even hoped that the game on Saturday might turn things around. But it does also feel like every time this team has one of those games where you think, okay, they finally played like an easy, nice win. All facets of the game felt pretty good, and it's just an egg. the next day. Just a total egg that they lay, and you feel like they don't ever build any momentum. I don't know, man.
I'm not going to judge their fire or attitude.
It's subjective.
When you have dozens to hundreds of millions of dollars at stake personally, that's a huge incentive.
I guess it more is one of those things where we've watched teams in the past, and this is all anecdotal, right? But we've watched teams in the past that just feel like they have more of a vibe to them, more of an energy. Like
those teams won World Series.
I suppose
those are the teams you're referring to. Sometimes it's easy to confuse fire for talent and ability. And right now, this team doesn't have the consistent ability.
They don't have neither of those things.
Right. I think a more appropriate way of distilling how I feel and how you feel is process. The process needs refinement. Now, as a preface, I wish there were more ejections. I loved when Big Z came out of the dugout during benches clearing events with belts. I loved Chris Bryant holding back Lou Piniella. I loved Anthony Rizzo going to Aroldis Chapman.
Joe Madden, you mean?
Joe Madden, I'm sorry, older dudes. Sure. I loved how Aroldis Chapman was screamed at by Rizzo in Cincinnati. I love all that. I wish we had more of that from a selfish fan's perspective. But I'm careful to recognize that is largely meaningless. So what matters is process. Now, to your point about them missing pitches on hittable counts, staring at pitches that seem like they're meatballs, I think that's reflective of an ongoing process that is going through different iterations. Seiya Suzuki is a perfect example. Last season, in the second half, when Seiya was around a 400 weighted on base average, that came with more aggression. Undeniably so.
Yeah.
He said it. We saw it in his swing rate and his spray maps. Now, if you look at this season, I'll show a chart right here. When we look at Seiya's swing rates when ahead of the count in 1-0 and 2-0 counts, on the left is the second half when he had a WOBA around 400. What you're noticing is that around the entire zone, there's more of a concerted effort to swing at more pitches, center cut. Of course, that's what you want. Now, if you move your eyes to the right, you're noticing a less concerted effort to swing center cut, but you're also noticing a concerted effort to swing at pitches all over the strike zone.
Yeah.
In one sense, Seiya's more aggressive this year, but it's not selectively aggressive. That explains why Seiya's chase rates, which is in the top 10th percentile, doesn't match his walk rate, which is around Nico Horner's walk rate. Because what we're seeing here is Seiya is being more aggressive, but he's being aggressive ahead of counts against pitches that are not particularly suitable for damage. And that's that ongoing iteration process. And quite frankly, that is in part due or in part responsible from the hitting infrastructure. That is reflective of Dustin Kelly and all the good work he's done, but this is too slow of a process because this type of slow process means less runs from your cleanup hitter or your 3-hitter. This was the calculated risk you're talking about. And right now we're seeing this affect the 2024 competitiveness. It's too slow, Corey.
Yeah. Yeah. I don't know.
And that's the most disappointing thing because you were very high on Seiya. I'm still high on Seiya. If you look at Seiya's hard hit rate, bat speed, bat length, chase rate, every single feature you want in a hitter, Seiya possesses. It's so frustrating when that talent doesn't produce runs because most times players who show these features are the best hitters in the league. But for some reason with Seiya, it's taken 3 seasons of these weird adjustment phases. And I understand why the front office made that calculated risk. The risk is it's going to be still slow, and it has been too slow.
Yeah. Comment here from our guy, Steiner Math. As always, love the name. At some point, gentlemen, fans don't care about hearing all the advanced analytics. We care about results, and this team can have all the shiny analytics. to drool over. They aren't producing. Yeah, I mean, I think that's the we had a good weekend, a good week, I think, but I think that's the Christopher Morel conversation basically in a nutshell. Long term for the organization and kind of projecting things out for a 24-year-old, you like a lot of the process. But the 2024 Chicago Cubs need results now. And as we've talked about, they've been hitting him lower in the order, which I've been saying for weeks now. Despite loving Morel and believing in what we're seeing, we've been talking about how him hitting cleanup and not getting the results, it really hurts the team, whether we believe in the long-term process or not. But it's true. Like, when you're this far into a retool, you got to start seeing results. That's why so many people, us included, are asking the questions of, is Jed's seat kind of hot? What does Tom Ricketts think about all this, et cetera, et cetera? And the reason is because you need results at some point. Fans don't care that you've garnered 8 top prospects in MLB Pipeline's top 100. That's great. It's good news. Fans are glad to hear it. But if the results don't come at 1060 West Addison, I don't think people care that they have the 56th ranked prospect who's 19 playing in Tennessee. Does anybody care? No. The Chicago Cubs Major League Baseball team needs to win games. Well, yeah. My apologies to Greg Huss, who's probably like, I care.
Stop coming at me.
Hey. Yeah.
But you're right. But the expected stats...
and just speaking back to because I know we have a super chat too, but this one from our friend of the chat, Tyler, when the crowd was roaring, you feel the vibration. Tonight it happened. It happens all the time at Wrigley Field, and every hitter falters. Cody Bellinger, a big moment in the game tonight. Crowd on their feet, fouling pitches off, and ultimately strikes out. I saw that sentiment a lot on social media. Like, the fans are in it every pitch. They're filling the ballpark. They are willing this team to try and do something. And it just isn't there. And, that common sentiment that, it just feels like as fans, as a fan base, what we give to this organization, it just feels like we deserve better. And I know you said this, I think a few weeks ago, we just deserve better than another, well, maybe if they all get hot at the right time, they can sneak into the wild card kind of thing. I think we should be aiming for higher than that, at this point, as a franchise. But I want to read this super chat. Appreciate that. Braxton Volk says, it looks like they don't want to be there. All I was saying, Brendan, is it's a common thread from a lot of our YouTube chat, and I see it on social media too. I never question effort from the players, and I would go back on really anyone and defend that. We don't know, sometimes people will see a guy jogging to first base on a ground out, but I never question the effort of these players. They put in a lot of time training and rehabilitating their bodies. They're traveling all over. They're trying. But it does feel like there just is, they feel flat, Brendan. And of course, it's easy to say sitting on the couch. And I know you said it doesn't inherently matter. I think to a degree, though, and there's certain players, one of them, the jersey hanging over my right shoulder here, certain players and teams have that kind of attitude about them that this game, they're going to leave it all out there. And I'm not questioning the effort, but some players and teams specifically just have an energy about them that their business is serious. They're going to fight for every call, every pitch, and there's an energy about them. And this team just doesn't have that. It doesn't feel like they have that.
I understand that. The Cubs front office hired a manager to keep the status quo, to keep the emotional imbalance that's natural throughout the season more balanced than the next guy. This was what they wanted. On the other hand, you've heard me talk about this for years now. I think you should leverage unique emotional circumstances because that brings about different ways of thinking and different adjustments. When I express frustration with the manager or player not going absolutely ballistic, what I'm really saying is I wish that happened because it changes how you perceive different situations. It changes how you think about different situations. So I'm always going to believe that. It's different than judging their effort level. Again,
Yeah.
when you have for Cody and Bellinger, he has a $200+ million contract at stake. The other guys too, the entire young pitching staff, they are playing for arbitrated contracts in the next 1 or 2 years at millions of dollars. To judge effort is a little unfair when that much money is
Well,
at
I'm not.
play.
That's what I mean.
And I'm not saying you are at all.
And I don't feel like a lot of the comments are either. I think it's just a perception.
I'm just trying to cover all my bases over here.
I know.
Because there is criticism that there's certain players who just don't have that effort. They just don't care. We heard this about Manny Ramirez, and maybe I'm a little bit more biased because we heard this about Aramis Ramirez for years, and that stung me because he was my guy, and he should be getting all of his praise that we see today.
It was a horrible take from a bad take machine.
I'm biased in trying to defend these guys when I have that memory in place.
I get it.
Let me do the ad break here because we're getting ahead of the place. Then I'll throw it back to you.
Yeah.
Okay. Mando whole body deodorant will have you smelling great all summer. Mando's array of odor controlling solution ensures you'll be fresh from head to toe. The solid stick and invisible cream tube control odor for 72 hours, but you can start odor control in the shower with the 4-in-1 cleansing bar and acidified body wash, which helps stop odor before it even starts. It's perfect for new customers. It comes with a solid stick deodorant, cream tube deodorant, 2 free products of your choice, like mini body wash and deodorant wipes, and free shipping. That's Mando's starter pack. Mando has a discount code to help you get hooked up on all the favorite smelling whole body deodorant products on the market. New customers get $5 off a starter pack with our exclusive code CHGO. That equates to 40% off your starter pack. Use code CHGO at shopmando.com. shopmando.com. Link is in the description below because I butchered spelling that. I always have a hard time spelling on air. That is shopmando.com. Again, use code CHGO. I may need my Shady Rays to read these ad breaks, Corey. Shady Rays, get ready for the season ahead with quality shades built to last. Our friends at Shady Rays have you covered with premium polarized shades that won't break the bank. I wear Shady Rays daily because I have an array of different colors. I like the light brown colors during summer. They have hundreds of other options to choose from, colors, styles, so you're bound to find the perfect pair to match your style. Exclusively for our listeners, Shady Rays is giving out their best deal of the season. Head to shadyrays.com, use code CHGO for 35% off polarized sunglasses. Try for yourself. The shades rated 5 stars by over 300,000 people.
All right, Brendan. So I want to get into some of the player specifics, but, also just, again, speaking on kind of finishing up on the homestand and all of that, reading a tweet here from our guy, Cody Del Mendo. Luis Severino, 17% K rate, has struck out 7 guys this month in the 3 prior starts, 10 against the Cubs tonight. Does just kind of feel that way. You go back to some of the pitchers that they faced in past weeks, several times, guys coming in with 4.5 ERA, 5 ERA, and they just don't do that much against them. It feels like a thing. Seeing the comment on the screen from Dr. Drew, Mets fan here. The whole month of May, the Mets were a mess. The Mets can turn it around, so can the Cubs. Says they're a Bears fan, so that's why they're here. Appreciate you joining in. We don't have Grimace. That's the problem.
No.
We don't have our Grimace to turn the season around. So if anybody has any suggestions of fast food mascots that the Cubs can invite to the ballpark to turn their season around, that would be great. All in all, just on the homestand, and then I kind of want to talk about Javier Assad since he pitched on Sunday night. 4-5 on that homestand. Just it's not good enough. That was a real opportunity, and we saw more of the same. Lackluster offense, blown games. That game on Monday, Brendan, you and I haven't been on air since that happened. I went to that game. I went solo to the game on Monday, and I remember the feeling when Neris gave up the go-ahead home run to Thairo Estrada. I tweeted this, and I think I texted you this, but like it was so predictable that it felt fake. I felt like I was like in a simulation almost, because I was like, that's not possible. Like that he walked a guy, catcher's interference, and then gave up a 3-run home run to blow this game. Like there's just no, it felt genuinely fake at how predictable it was. And it was just another one in the pile of games that they've given away and screwed around. And it just was it was a disappointing homestand. And now, of course, you look at the Cubs schedule, they are probably already on a plane to San Francisco. So that's always fun. You play Sunday Night Baseball and then have to immediately turn around and fly out to the West Coast, where you're there for 4 games. Then you're back in Milwaukee to face the Brewers. Then you have the Phillies, the Angels, the Orioles, and then the Cardinals again before the All-Star break. There's some good teams in there, Brendan. This is a tough road trip. You're going out to the West Coast, then to play the Brewers in their park. You got to play the Orioles, who have a great offense. Like, this is a tough portion of the schedule, and why I think there, was so much emphasis on this 9-game homestand, and to leave it with only 1 series win and a 4-5 overall record, it feels disappointing.
Well, when you spell it out like that, my first thought is, well, this is going to be it. They're going to go to the West Coast. The losing is going to continue. The starting pitching staff regression we're seeing from Assad, despite unbelievable efforts to start the season, and Shota Imanaga's reversion back to reality, perhaps. All this is happening with more injuries in the bullpen, more blown saves, more uninspiring efforts from the bullpen, and an offense that continues to be lackluster and inconsistent. To me, this signals this is it. We'll be doing this podcast in 2 weeks. We'll be 10 games below 500. That's my first thought. I hate to be that negative, but it's hard to not be optimistic when this continues.
It's a legitimate concern. I mean, there was a reason. Again, I don't like calling things must win or things like that when it's June. And again, even as we sit here after this homestand, they're 2 games out of a wild card spot. Now, I do see sometimes when I say that, some of the comments are like, well, what's the point of getting a wild card spot?
You're just defending the front office and Tom Ricketts.
Yeah. The only reason I say that is because if they're within striking distance of a playoff spot, I don't see the front office selling. I don't see ownership.
It's too early for that discussion.
Right. So, but I'm just saying, I'm not sitting here like, please get the 3rd wild card. I need it. Like I've said a million times, my standard is higher than that. I only bring that up to contrast. We've talked a lot about the issues this team has, but their place in the standings is their place in the standings. We can't really, we can't change that. That is what it is. So we have to look at things through that lens, because that's how I believe this team is going to operate. Another super chat from Mr. Cub, DB Swanson 7. Appreciate the super chat. Says, first, Brendan dressed pretty sharp.
Thank you.
I do like your little jacket.
It's a hoodie. running light jacket. It's a little brisk out here.
Wow.
I'm cold out here. So
second,
gotta wear that.
In addition to Brendan being dressed sharp, second, this team makes me want to scream. 1 through 9 looks defeated. Thank you for your hard work. Football almost here. It's a bad sign, Brendan, when folks are looking forward to the Chicago Bears to spare them how they feel about the Cubs.
Fight on.
I'm well aware that things look better for the Bears. I'm not much of a football guy, but historically, relying on the Chicago Bears to save, your mental well-being, tricky business. But hey, it's where we are. So I do want to talk about Javier Assad. So because I think it's an interesting discussion. It's an especially interesting discussion when you consider what we saw from Shota, Leiter Jr. hitting the IL, Kyle Hendricks being back in the rotation with the Wick situation and Ben Brown and all this stuff. So this is all stuff that's going on. So I think it all plays a role into a bigger conversation about the starting staff and the pitching staff as a whole. So Sunday night against the Mets, obviously not a great one for Javier Assad. 4 1/3, 7 hits, 4 earned runs, 1 walk, no strikeouts, gives up a couple homers. ERA in the season sitting at 3.04, which is nice. The counter to that, though. The ERA in the month of June after the game tonight, 4.7. And I think the bigger part of the conversation, Brendan, now I want to start this conversation by noting Javier Assad has done nothing since being brought up by the Chicago Cubs but exactly what they've asked him to do. And he is a huge part of, I don't know if I would call it success over the last year plus of the team, but they would be in a way worse spot without Javier Assad. And I want to make that very clear. They've asked him to start. They've asked him to pitch in short relief, long relief, go up, go down, et cetera, et cetera. He has done it all. He has accepted the tasks and done them all extremely well. The conversation, though, Brendan, I think quickly becomes, you look even going back just to the month of May, he has thrown a full 6 innings twice, on May 5th against the Brewers and May 15th against the Braves. The rest of these outings are mostly under 5 innings, and they're not all small pitch counts. Even, the 4 1/3 against the Mets on Sunday night, 90 pitches. 5 against the Giants, 92 pitches. 4 2/3 against the Rays in Tampa, 90 pitches. So it's an interesting discussion because the bullpen is its own problem, and then you try to square, well, would you rather Assad deliver these kind of short starts that are often very good? The one thing he's done, you can go up and down this game log, he keeps the team in the game. The starts have not been as effective as they were in the beginning of the year, but he's still not going out there and giving you outings where the team is out of it by the time he leaves the game. They're almost always in the game when he pitches. But when you're dealing with this many bullpen problems, and you're also pushing up, he, as we've talked about, he is a guy you have to monitor how much you're throwing him, how many pitches he's throwing, how many innings he's throwing, et cetera, et cetera. It becomes an interesting conversation, Brendan. Now, guys are still hurt. Are they coming back? I don't know. But you talked when Hendricks was going through those struggles, particularly at the beginning of the year, that it was very valuable for the team to continue trying to make it work with him because he's a reliable guy to potentially go deeper into games and eat those innings, which is valuable. And if you can get effectiveness out of him, that has a lot of value because of what it allows you to do with other members of the team. Now, it's only been 2 outings, but Kyle Hendricks has looked a lot better that Friday against the Cardinals, and his last start was vintage Kyle Hendricks. So it doesn't mean he's back, but it was an important thing. A lot of people wanted him DFA'd, he's washed, he's completely useless, blah, blah, blah. And all I think you really did was preach patience with that. And at least for these last 2 outings, it's paid off. I'm curious what you think about Assad, specifically as we've turned the calendar to June and the results are not quite as pristine as they were in the beginning of the year. And what do you do with a guy who has been so good for you and this pitching staff, but is really looking at 4 to 5 innings for all these starts and what that kind of means for the rest of the pitching staff? It's a deep breath.
I mean, they don't have many options, Corey. The injuries to Wicks, to Brown, to Horton are extremely unfortunate.
Yeah.
When we were talking about Hendricks in April, after his awful start to the season, not DFAing Hendricks was a reserve for the worst case scenario for your depth. We're seeing the worst case scenario right now. If Assad is moved out of the rotation to the bullpen, which should not happen right now because there's no other alternative, then you legitimately don't have a starting pitcher to fill that role other than Hayden Wesneski or Drew Smyly. There's no one coming from AAA, dude. You may have Dan Straley come up, but that's it. This is a starting rotation. God help us if Hendricks continues to show the same bad signs prior to being removed from the starting rotation. There's not many other options. The best case scenario is Wicks comes back and he's fine, that Brown's neck The injury, the concern from the benign lesion is not as problematic as it appears, which seems right now encouraging, and that's the case. And at some point within the next 4, 5, 6 weeks, then you can start to maybe mess with the starting rotation. But there's no other solution. The concern or the question with Assad was how long lasting is his pitch repertoire as a starting pitcher? How long can he last with an 85% contact rate, 10 percentage points more than league average? And is all the discrepancy between his FIP and ERA and the ability to get runners out when they're in scoring position, how sustainable is that? For a period of time, it looked as if he might be breaking those computers because he was doing it for so long, dating back to 2022. But there comes a point where you start looking at how many innings he's on pace, how many innings he's accumulated, and now some of the runs he's given up, and those initial questions start to percolate back up. The big concern with Assad is he's on pace for 170 innings. Last season, at the big league level, 109 innings. In AAA, 14 innings. He's on pace to exceed his innings limit by 45 innings. Right now, he's already at 83 innings, and it's not even July. He's only 26 innings away from his big league total last season. So the worst case scenario is, well, Wicks can't come back because the injury is persisting. Ben Brown's neck is not healing at the expected rate that you want. Hendricks continues to perform poorly, and now you're stressing out a young arm in Assad, inching towards an innings limit that he was never designed to reach at this point. And those are the broken processes that we're talking about, because ideally you have reinforcements beyond those injuries we're seeing, and they're not there right now. You're not seeing that rapid promotion from the lower levels either to supplement some of these concerns. This is a huge issue, Corey. My biggest fear is that if the offense does emerge back to showing signs of health as it was in the second half of last year, that the starting rotation is going to be on fumes with a bullpen that's already on fumes. And at that point, there's nothing you can do.
Yeah, I think even the Assad kind of the bigger situation is similar to some that we've talked about on the offense, where instead of being able to look at him and be grateful for how he's done in the many roles that the Cubs have asked him to be and things like that, it ends up basically where just more of the burden is put on him. And it's just like, well, we need him to go deeper into games and all that. And it's like, well, maybe he's not suited for that. But the fact that the rest of the bullpen has been so bad, and that you have to look at things like that, it's like, that's not Assad's fault. He's done everything he can and everything that they've asked of him. But you can't just put that burden on every player that is doing their job because half the team is not doing their job. The Mark Leiter Jr. thing is a bummer. Yeah. He had clearly not been as effective as we've seen him throughout his time as a reliever. But this is also, we talked in the offseason that, really the main move was bringing Neris in and, hoping that other guys took steps up, guys like Luke Little. And then, as we talked about, maybe Hayden Wisniewski would be in the pen. We knew that there would be these guys in kind of these flexible roles. But last year, everybody knew they didn't do enough at the trade deadline as it was happening. And you were running ALLCITY, Julian Merriweather, and Mark Leiter Jr. into the ground. And now you don't have any of them. Again, ALLCITY's hurt. He wasn't effective when he was in there. Julian Merriweather's hurt. He's working his way back, but that's a slow process. And then you have to hope he's nearly as effective as he's been for the Cubs throughout his tenure. And Leiter he was hit or miss. Splitter wasn't effective in a lot of those outings, and now he's hurt. And so now it's on the rest of these guys to pick it up. Colton Brewer's been pretty good for this team so far. Keegan Thompson, obviously picking up the save the other night. Like, he's shown some flashes of being back to the Keegan we saw when he first came up. But you're putting a lot of pressure on these guys who have not had these roles before, or exceeded in these roles before. So that is, the Mark Leiter Jr. news is not good. It's not going to make things any easier for Craig Counsell and Tommy Hotovy and this whole bunch.
No. All right, it's the second ad break here. We'll come back around, continue this lovely discussion. Every Sunday I look forward to talking Cubs baseball with you, Corey. Every Sunday. It's such a joy in my life to talk about this team. Okay. Lucy's nicotine, 100% pure nicotine, always tobacco-free. It's available in pouches, gum, and our favorite, breakers. If you're not a pouch guy or gal, Lucy gum is available in 2 milligrams, 4 milligrams, or 6 milligrams. Midday slump, even an offensive slump at the golf course, on the baseball field, post-coffee, etc. You can level up with your nicotine routine with Lucy. Go to lucy.co/CHGO Cubs and use promo code CHGO Cubs to get 20% off your first order. Lucy offers free shipping and has a 30-day refund policy if you do change your mind. That's lucy.co and use code CHGO Cubs to get 20% off and always free shipping. And here comes the fine print. Lucy's products are only for adults of legal age, and every order is age verified. Warning, this product does contain nicotine. Nicotine is an addictive chemical. Order is age verified. When it comes to finding your next vehicle, make Ray CDJR your number one draft pick. This June, shop Chryslers, Dodges, Jeeps, and Rams at Ray CDJR in Fox Lake. And during the Make This Summer event, find the perfect vehicle and score huge savings too. Let the amazing team at Ray CDJR help you land a perfect vehicle at the perfect price, because with Ray's Price Promise, the numbers you're hearing now are the same prices you can expect to shop in-store and online. That's because Ray's Price Promise means no price changing, no add-ons, no hidden fees. So if you're in the market for a new vehicle, then you have to check out the team at Ray Chrysler, Dodge, Jeep, and Ram, because they are the only team we recommend. Visit them today on Route 12 in Fox Lake. And for more information, visit Ray CDJR in Fox Lake or Ray CDJR.
All right, Brendan. Let's talk. I saw it in the chat a little bit, and I know I tweeted this during Shota's start on Friday, that the entire year, these numbers probably changed after Shota's start. I didn't look it up since, but going into that start on Friday, all year, they had the 5th best ERA from their starting pitchers all season. In the month of June, I think it was the 2nd best ERA in baseball, not National League, baseball. So top 5 all year from your starters. And we've talked about it. You didn't pay that off enough. These guys have been so good. They've been near perfect. I mean, you almost had an entire rotation of guys with a sub-3 ERA at one point, which is astounding. You had Shota for 2+ months as the best pitcher in baseball. And you didn't pay that off enough. The way you paid that off was being a handful of games under 500 and blowing half those games or giving them no run support in the others. Sometimes both. Sometimes blowing it and giving them no run support. And now you're looking at things and you have outings like that with Shota. He's going to have blow-up starts. It happens, guys. Not everybody's going to be perfect. Javier Assad has been great for you for over a year. He's going to have outings where they're shorter even than his norm, and he gives up a few home runs, and so the game gets away from him a little bit. These things are going to happen, but you didn't take enough advantage when this starting staff was one of the best in the league, and they might continue to be. But when you don't take advantage of stuff like that, you can't look at them when they have non-competitive starts or blow-up starts. They're going to happen. They limited them to almost never happening through the first few months of this season. Very rarely did we look at these games and say, oh yeah, the starting pitching took them out of it. It's a handful of those Hendricks starts, the one Shota start in Milwaukee, like Steele once when he came back from the IL. Otherwise, this starting staff has given you a chance to win every single night, and you didn't pay it off. And there might be some regression there. And if the rest of the team, the offense and the bullpen, doesn't step up, well, that's going to look pretty ugly, guys. Like, that's just how it is. So it's frustrating because this starting staff has done such good work, and it didn't get paid off. And if they do run out of gas in certain cases, or there's injuries, or they just have more of these blow-up starts that kind of regress things back to the mean, it's going to look bad if the other facets of this team don't pick them up. And it's just pretty frustrating. But
it's not a certainty they do. We talk about Shota and his poor start against New York. And the concern is, well, he's not used to going every fifth day from a different league. You don't really have the precedence that he can last a 162 game season every fifth day, but you don't know for sure. If you want to be optimistic, Shota regresses, but his mean is that which was better than you and I expected, a sub 3.5 ERA guy. Steele, the optimistic outlook is he's just as good as we saw last season, where he's a Cy Young candidate. Then you match those two, you see Taillon's stability now, which dating back to his last 200 innings, he has a sub 4 ERA. And then you get positive performances from guys getting healthy. Ben Brown, Jordan Wicks, Kyle Hendricks comes back into play. So it can work out. It's not to say this is doom and gloom, but when signs of reversion and or regression take place, it just makes you spiral, because underneath that possibility is a foundation of a weak offense that hasn't shown any consistent signs of positivity. That's why I need to see that positivity just to offset some of that concern that might happen with the rotation.
Yeah. And I do like this YouTube comment from IOF Ghost. Front office knew you had a staff that had some guys that would only go 5 or 6 innings, and you didn't build a strong enough bullpen. I agree. And we said that, I think, throughout the offseason, that you had some unknowns. And at the time, we didn't know Shota was going to be as good as he was. But you knew there was some unknowns. You knew there were guys you were going to be pushing up against their innings limits and asking them to take on roles that maybe they hadn't before. And you didn't shore up a bullpen. And now the 3 guys you ran into the ground, quite literally, last year to try to make the playoffs and failed, they're all hurt. The guys you brought over aren't effective. Neris is a complete mess and has been really the whole season. And you're sitting here asking these questions. We shouldn't have to ask, how does Assad going 4 or 5 innings affect the rest of the team? You should have planned for that.
The question really is quite crazy. We're talking about, can Assad last 175 innings?
Right.
That was never.
Of course not. Yeah.
Never a question 2 months ago.
Yeah.
It's crazy how we're at this point.
I do want to ask you, we did see a really good. Well, I'm curious.
Are we going over an hour today, by the way? It's fine
probably,
if we are.
I don't know.
Right.
The outing on Friday from Shota, nothing jumping out at you? Any thought on that?
I mean, he was throwing slower. He was throwing a mile and a half slower.
So something to monitor. Yeah, perhaps.
Well, he said he did that on purpose. So it's not like injury concerns. He legitimately said he wanted to reserve his stamina. So he also followed up that saying he needs to, just to paraphrase, change his process and not let that happen again. So if he's saying he did that on purpose, then I have to believe him. Now, if that velocity dip was not because of an intentional effort, then I'd be concerned. Yeah. But I'm not concerned because he said he did that on purpose.
No, well, and I'm not either. I'm just asking you. You're the pitch doctor. But yeah, like I said, he had been basically the best, if not one of the best pitchers in baseball to start his career here. And we were in June. He's due for a clunker. It happens. Warm day at Wrigley. These things happen. And I trust him to kind of take those results. Not to say it's a good thing, but, sometimes you do need to figure out, okay, this is what a team is planning to do to me the second time they face me. Now you can go and compare the 2 different times you've pitched against the Mets, see how they attacked you, and you learn from that. It's part of coming over from Japan, coming over from a different league, and adapting to the major league schedule and major league hitters. Part of that is going to be going through those games, taking those, as you always say, Brendan, data points, and using them to get better, which I expect Shota to continue to do. I'm curious what you think about Jameson Taillon. Jameson Taillon was really good on Saturday. Like I said, one of his best starts as a Cub, and we've talked about him too, important. He's on a 4-year deal. He gets paid a pretty decent amount of money, when we're looking at the payroll and we're talking about them pushing up at the luxury tax, things like that, like Jameson Taillon needs to be good. He needs to be a reliable member of this rotation, give this team good starts, and perform. Yeah. And I think he's been really good for this team this year. Like I said, the peripherals from his first several starts kind of felt like he was due for some more not as good of results as he was getting. But the start on Saturday felt a little different than that. 7 innings, 6 hits, 1 run, no walks, 10 strikeouts. The 1 run coming on a solo home run. It was a warm day at Wrigley. Wind is blowing all around. That was a really good start from Jameson Taillon. So I know he's someone you have watched for his entire time as a Cub, specifically last year, because some of those starts were so confounding to figure out what was going on and what the problem was. What'd you see from Taillon on Saturday? Was it different than what we've seen earlier in the year from him? And how much confidence do you have that he can kind of continue with the overall, right now he's got a 2.9 ERA. How confident are you that he can continue to deliver starts like this for the Cubs for the rest of the season?
I'd be surprised if it's still a 2.9 ERA in August. I would like to see him get more whiffs. Contact rate still worse than league average, which means if this continues, then some nonsense happens, base hits fall, runs come in. That being said, I have expectation that he can be league average, which is what I'm asking him to be and what the front office is paying him to be. Now, there's a larger discussion, and the discussion is the Cubs paid him $17 million per year, not because they wanted league average performance, but because they invested in improving him and changing his repertoire to get him beyond just a 2-win pitcher. A completely different conversation. And I agree with that type of assessment if you're critical of Taillon. That being said, the way he's adapted is quite impressive. Comes into the Cubs, adds a sweeper, as a result, loses his four seam. Tommy Hottovy said that. Cutter then started to be used more. Now he's using the cutter once every 4 pitches. He initially started his career in Major League Baseball as a north to south guy. Now he's east to west. Throws a sweeper around 20%, throws a curveball around 20%, and now a cutter around 24%, and a 4-seamer in between, and some stinkers every now and then. The cutter's interesting because that is a unique pitch type. Now, if you give me 2 minutes here, I'm going to show a graph that looks kind of weird, but I'm still going to do it anyway. I know I'm going to get screamed at because it's not an easy to read graph, but it's kind of interesting. Okay. So bear with me here. So
Great lead in.
It's kind of a confusing graph. Here's what this all means. If you look at the top, you see red dots and blue dots. The further away from the center of all these dots, the more unique the pitcher is. Now you're seeing Hayden Wesneski and you're seeing Jameson Taillon. These are their cutters. Their cutters are by definition outliers by all their StatCast metrics. This means that compared to our normal cutter, the ones that Wesneski and Taillon throw don't look like any other cutter. They are faster with more horizontal break and they cross home plate at angles that are unorthodox. That cutter is having success for Taillon. He has positive run value on that pitch. His most valuable pitch type this season, the cutter. That outlier trait means that there's some uncertainty in projecting him in the future in an optimistic fashion. So I say, okay, maybe he can't be a 2.9 ERA guy. I don't know that for sure. I would bet that he's not, but when you have pitch types that don't follow the normal distribution of pitchers, then you don't really know for sure. Now, before I throw it back to you, on that same topic of Wesneski, when I was making those graphs, I was shocked that Taillon, his cutter, was in the same territory as Wesneski from StatCast metrics because they have different release points and they have different vertical breaks on their cutters. But they share velocity, the angle at which they release the ball, and the angle at which the ball crosses home plate and horizontal break. Then I started to think, okay, well, this is interesting. So in reality, the pitch is crossing home plate almost exactly like Taillon's for Wesneski, but there's one difference. It's in the vertical break. If Taillon's having success with this pitch and Wesneski needs a pitch to offset lefties, it kind of makes sense for Wesneski to figure out how Taillon's using this pitch and learn and mold that pitch shape with his mechanics in mind to at least match some of the characteristics of Taillon. That means it's convenient for the Cubs to use Taillon as a reference for Wisniewski. All this is to say, Taillon's success is significantly contributed by that cutter. That cutter, with every StatCast metric in mind, is most similar to Hayden Wisniewski's cutter with a few different traits that are different. But those traits could be molded to match the effectiveness of Taillon's cutter. That is how you get beyond these projections, when you find ways to outperform your initial projections. So I need to see the Cubs capitalize on developing guys like Wisniewski, and I'm disappointed that AAA guys come up, AA guys don't come up, and you don't get the supplement arms that you need that other teams consistently show, like the Dodgers. If you're going to criticize the pitching infrastructure, this is where you criticize it. The lack of supplement arms has hurt this team over the past couple of years. We need to see development emerge, and one guy I hope emerges, like Taillon has, is Wisniewski.
So we do have our guy Cody Delmendo in the chat. Like me, apparently, says you're sending him graphs at almost 2 in the morning.
I actually don't remember that. What did I send?
Well, Cody's not a liar, so... And you do it to me, so I believe him.
Well, you didn't respond to my graph last night, by the way. It was a good graph. It was the one I just showed. It was the one I just showed.
Yeah.
That was a complete accident, by the way.
But Tyler in the chat asking, do you think Wisniewski should use his cutter against lefties rather than his slider?
So the cutter has more depth. It drops more than your typical cutter. So that's a concern where it might actually look like a slider, and then that can get eaten up. Ideally, yes. But when I bring up the similarities, when I say, okay, Taillon's using this cutter and Wisniewski has a cutter that kind of looks like his in many different features, what I'm saying is, can Wisniewski somehow change the shape or some tweak to at least reflect how Taillon goes about his business? So I'm saying there's an entry point to improving because you have an unexpected similarity with Taillon. I'm not saying do this, just throw more cutters. I'm saying learn from a reference, because when you just objectively ask the question, which cutters most resemble Taillon's? The top 4 guys among those top 4 in all of baseball is Wisniewski. So that was a surprise to me.
Yeah, so I do want to ask you, I'm curious your thought when we were doing the show on Wednesday after the Cubs won the series against the Giants. I remember talking to our guy Ryan Herrera, who was out at beautiful historic Wrigley Field for ALLCHGO.com, and he mentioned I asked him, earlier in the year and some of those starts that went poorly, Kyle Hendricks in the postgame said, I feel like my stuff feels pretty good. I feel like I only made a couple bad pitches. And you would look at the results, and I think a lot of people were like, are you sure about that? Like, the results don't look that way. But he seemed pretty confident in that. When I asked Ryan if he thought that, when they talked to Hendricks, did he express that he was doing something different? Did something feel different? Like, what clicked in this start and maybe that outing against the Cardinals that was not clicking before? And he credited Miguel Amaya and his game calling and at least giving some credit to some
strategy.
of the... Say again?
Strategy, pitch calling.
Yeah, and
process.
And calling pitches maybe, I think he used the word unexpected. And just changing up the sort of sequencing that maybe Kyle would have gone with on his own. You've been watching Kyle Hendricks for a long time. You've written about Kyle Hendricks. You have podcasted about Kyle Hendricks. You've made endless graphs about Kyle Hendricks. Should we all buy that? Or is Kyle being nice to his catcher? You very passionately argued for being patient at least a little bit with Kyle, more so because the velocity looked good, the stuff looked pretty good, and the value to the team, if he could figure it out at all, was pretty significant versus just ditching him at the first sign of regressing and things like that. So I'm curious, like, when you hear that, like, do you feel that way? Do you feel like the stuff was always pretty good. It doesn't matter how Miguel Amaya was calling. Like, what do you think about something like that?
Yes and no. I mean, to clarify, the reason I didn't want to DFA Hendricks was because I thought there was a possibility that young pitchers would not perform as you want them to perform, whether it be to injuries or unexpected results. And that's what's kind of happening right now. So I wanted Hendricks to be that failsafe. His stuff has continued to look exactly the same. His stuff now looked exactly the same as it did in April. No difference. The change that he's made is curveball frequency, using his curveball more, using his curveball 20% of the time. That's a massive increase in frequency.
When, if I remember correctly, when he was coming out of the pen, he was leading with the curveball in terms of pitch usage.
That pitch used to be a get me over pitch to start at bats or to show a curveball when you're ahead of the count, just to keep batters off balance. That pitch is now being used in 2-strike counts. That's crazy. He got strikeouts with that curveball. So in one sense, I think he's right that Amaya did call a good game. He did call 20% curveballs in a start. That was unique for Kyle. So Amaya deserves credit for that. At the same time, the question I always had was, if Kyle continues to showcase this stuff, then in more starts, is there some stabilization to happen? And I think there's two truths in that. That being said, though, there's always that other question, whereas has the league adjusted to Kyle's stuff? That even if the stuff is good in his mind, that the hitters are better these days and they can now adapt to that stuff. I don't know the answer to that, but right now the Cubs have no choice. And because Kyle's now throwing a curveball more than he had before, it does make me more optimistic that this is a change that is to his benefit, and maybe a change that makes him at least a starting pitcher for this team for the foreseeable future.
Yeah, I mean, look, at this point, if you could, you just need him to be serviceable as a fifth man in this rotation.
That's it. Yeah. Just stay alive. That way, when the injuries stop from the bullpen, Leiter comes back, Merriweather comes back, Brown comes back, Wicks comes back, that at least you have that option in place. I'm not asking for him to be a consistent guy.
Yeah, well, and I think with Hendricks too, like at this point, given the injuries and, just where the team is at, you're really just asking, like I said, when I say serviceable, what I mean is there's a space between even what we've gotten from Hendricks the last 2 outings and what we've saw at the beginning of the year. There can be a middle ground. Like we don't have to watch every start and go, that was vintage Kyle Hendricks. The other day against the Giants, it was 5 2/3, 2 hits, 1 run, just 1 walk, and 8 strikeouts. Ton of whiffs. I think he got 14 whiffs in that game, if I remember correctly. It was a great, his changeup looked great, fading down and away to those left-handed hitters. Beautiful stuff from Kyle Hendricks. But there's a middle ground. Like, not every start even has to be that. It's just really as long as we're avoiding the 1 1/3 of an inning and giving up 6 runs and 3 home runs over, that short period of time. A middle ground might be fine for this team. I think it was Tyler earlier in the YouTube chat talked about how, the compounding of so many of those short starts earlier in the year, those short, non-competitive starts. The team is out of the game. The offense is behind the 8 ball in the first 2-3 innings, and you're eating 5-6 innings of the bullpen every other night. You're looking at what that effect is. That does play a role in things. And we're, as you said, you were reading through like Assad's numbers. We're only in June.
That's
like we're not even through the All-Star break here, folks. Like, some of these pitchers are going to need rest. They're going to need space. They're going to need downtime. Some of them are going to have to be moved to different roles, because otherwise you're just going to blow them out completely, like you're seeing with the entirety of the back end of the 2023 bullpen. It's like some of this is not like super crazy when it happens. I don't think a lot of people would look at how they used Leiter last year, and even how Counsell had to use Leiter to start this year because of the volatility in the bullpen. And you say, yeah, Mark Leiter Jr. is on the IL. Like, nobody's going to hear that and go, what? No way. Mark Leiter Jr.? No way. He's hurt. Get out of here. Yeah. Like, of course. Yeah. So on that note, I believe the report from our guy Ryan Herrera at the ballpark was Justin Steele in Game 1 on Monday night against the Giants, Kyle Hendricks in Game 2, and then if I remember reading the tweet correctly, he said, Counsell said, we will figure it out from there. So, Godspeed.
All right.
But Steele in Game 1, Kyle Hendricks in Game 2. Justin Steele has looked great in his last several starts. Hopefully he can continue that. And at least for now, like, one of the better places, I think, for Kyle Hendricks to pitch, can give up some deep fly balls. It's a ballpark that plays very big. A lot of fly balls die at that warning track. So hopefully, even if he is not as fine-tuned as he was against the Giants this last time, I don't love him very quickly seeing an offense for the second time in a row in less than a week. But it's a better ballpark than most.
Oh, he's done it before in playoff series. Very important playoff series, by the way.
Can you give me an example, Brendan?
Oh, I can give you an example. In 2016, yeah, they
go on. I'm unfamiliar.
They had won the World Series in 2016.
Oh,
in the World Series, he pitched multiple times. I don't know if you knew this.
Oh, okay.
Including Game 7 against the same Cleveland team, and
it's the first I'm hearing of this.
They won that Game 7. Believe
cool.
it or not. Yeah. The guy behind you, by the way, pitched in that game too.
Oh, John Lester.
John Lester, correct.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right. Okay. Quick aside. We're over an hour, so things get a little weird with Corey and Brendan when we're over an hour. Well, and hey, I see it in the chat from our guy Tyler. Like, of course we want more. Like, here's the thing, and I've told this story on air before, but I went to Game 7 in Cleveland, and I do remember,
Which game? Sorry.
We just keep the bit rolls in on itself. Yeah. I do remember, I've said this before, to whatever deity, entity, spiritual situation you happen to believe in, I put out into the universe that if they won this game, as far as it related to sports, you're not going to hear from me again. I'm not going to ask for anything. I'm not going to wish. I'm not going to pray. I'm not going to dream. Just give me this one. And so, and even this many years later, I feel like I have to respect that. I put it out to the universe, and I feel like I have to respect that a little bit.
Have you respected it? Is this
No.
your fault? Is this your fault?
No, I no, because here's the deal. Because I do agree with the sentiment. And we've said this when we've talked all through the offseason. Our frustration was rooted in the idea that you have not won a real playoff game since 2017. You haven't made a real playoff series since 2018. As we always say, I don't care about 2020. I don't care what they were able to do for 60 games. Doesn't matter to me. It was great at the time. It was nice, whatever. But in the context of everything else, the front office, they don't get rewarded for that. It was a completely different thing out of context from everything else. You now have a president who's in his, fourth year? Hadn't won. Honestly, I feel like it's not a big deal, but like, just to phrase it in a certain way, Jed Hoyer hasn't won jack shit, Brendan.
Oh, wow. It's getting late. You're working yourself up.
I am working.
Here we go. I didn't expect this.
I think it was Baseball Junkie earlier asked if there was alcohol in this Coke. There's not. Okay.
I have no more wine tonight. I wish I did.
Yeah. But it is just one of those things where, yeah, man, like we want more. That's what I was saying earlier. And I know, again, you talked about this, and I think it was a clip that we put out on Twitter, or you tweeted about it, etc. And it's the fan base just deserves better. I saw so many people tweeting about it throughout this weekend, especially during this Sunday night game. Like, the fans are so like, if there was a way for fans to will a team to perform and to do better and to come through in those moments, the Cubs would be undefeated, because the fans at Wrigley Field are so into every pitch, every rally, every moment, and you can tell that the fans know the limitations of this team. I was at the game on Saturday with my brother, and when they scored those 5 runs in the first inning, standing ovation, because the fans know, they were like, thank heavens they were able to put up a crooked number to start this game. when they have those moments, even if it's the fifth inning, it's 3-2, and there's a runner on third or the bases are loaded, the fans are in it to try and will it to happen because they know it might be their only chance to score. And it's just frustrating that, like I said, we're sitting here having the same conversation week after week. You and I, at this point, half the time we come on, we're like, well, what do you want to talk about? Because we've talked about Morel's under the hood stats. We've talked about where he should play positionally. We've talked about Dansby and Cody Bellinger needing to, hit better and back to their career norm or the back of their baseball card, whatever. We talked about this ad nauseum, man. And it's frustrating in year whatever of a retool to be sitting here discussing, like I said, well, if the offense can click and these guys get hot and they go on a run, they can sneak into the third wild card by half a game. It just, the bar is on the floor at this point, and it's just disappointing. That's all I can say. It's just a disappointing situation to be in. And instead of, as we've talked about, looking at how Shota has performed as a free agent signing, so much less than some of these other pitchers, and especially Yamamoto, who came over from Japan and was seen as the more prized free agent signing. Instead of looking at that and having that catapult them to the top of the National League, or dreaming on what Morel can do, and if that came to be, it would push their offense to one of the best in the league. We're just sitting here and trying to figure out who's going to blow tomorrow's game, or which, mid pitcher they're going to strike out 12 times against and leave 15 people in scoring position and stuff. And it's frustrating. That's all. So
when the Cubs won the World Series, by the way, Theo gave speeches, gave a commencement speech at Yale. There was a segment in one of his speeches where, to paraphrase, he was describing the top to bottom organizational success and the effort. And he made a point saying success is at those lower levels. When there's that scout traveling from one city to the next city to the other city, and that one coach and instructs, just working with that catcher to improve and go through the system and surprise everyone, that's how you succeed. An example of that was Wilson Contreras' trajectory in 2016. A guy who didn't have the top tier prospect status, but ultimately was hitting home runs in a World Series playoff time. Right now, the Cubs top to bottom, the organization, the effort might be there, but the execution's not. So the question in the process is, why isn't those unexpected performances or development percolating up to the Cubs and providing value? Why is it that the pitching feels so taxed in the bullpen and right now on the staff? Why is this happening? And so when I express displeasure with the front office, it's not judging them by saying, oh, they should have spent more money, which maybe, yes, they should have. It's not judging them by saying, oh, they're just not trying. They're stupid, yada, yada, yada. The displeasure is more of a shared disappointment because they're not executing. The development's not robust enough. Maybe it's the analysts aren't diverse enough in their techniques. Maybe the coaching infrastructure needs to be changed. The process, whatever it is, however generalized you want to say it, has not yielded results. I understand the intention, how they were going about building this team. I share their disappointment and frustration that it hasn't worked. Frankly, we need results. We need to get back to the point where top to bottom, those developmental changes are percolating through the system, as Theo described in his World Series champion speech.
Well, and I see it in the chat too, but there was the sort of pervasive belief at the time that the Cubs were setting standards. They were the industry standard in certain areas of the game of baseball. They were the gold standard in certain aspects. And, part of that was their acceleration of young prospect timelines and being aggressive with those things. And even just the general premise to tank and get those players and build it up and time it all that way. And you and I have talked about, especially in the last several years, but it has not felt like that in ages.
No, I mean, the two biggest innovative features that you're describing, Number one was the international signing process. They blew past those penalties and said, to hell with it. I'm going to go get Gleyber Torres. I'm going to go get the guys I can use to trade for Miguel Montero. That was the first thing. The second thing was, as we know, drafting hitters first round. Hitter. Theo said, we can always buy pitching. In that environment, in that market, as you're pointing to John Lester, that was true. They bought all their pitchers, and they got somewhat fortunate with Jake Arrieta. That was the market in which they lived. Completely different environment now, and the reality of baseball changed for Theo's front office, where it turned into a developmental necessity that the Dodgers capitalized on and the Astros capitalized on while sharing those foundational traits that Theo innovated.
Yeah. It's just a bummer that, when
For sure.
I want to get back to when we look at the game of baseball now, I think people would obviously look at the Dodgers as the gold standard of that kind of marriage of development and spending money and an ownership group that wants to win and yada, yada. The Astros able to win multiple World Series, kind of continue from one base of that first core, continue developing, adding those guys like Kyle Tucker, Yordan Alvarez, etc., and being able to win again. The Atlanta Braves for their sort of shrewd ability to extend those young players and build a roster kind of shockingly of their own like players, but then capitalize on those moments to go get Matt Olson and make the tough decision to move on from Freddie Freeman, et cetera, et cetera. It's a bummer that the Cubs aren't in that group, and they don't feel like they're close to that group. They're not even, they wouldn't even be looked at as the innovative leader or the gold standard of their own division. Brendan, they haven't been the standard bearer of the NL Central in years. I mean, you're talking what? You're pushing almost a decade-ish? Little under. That's being, hyperbolic. But still, like, it's been a long time since anyone would have considered you to be the standard bearer, the flag bearer of the NL Central. And
those are the expectations. Yeah, it's a shame.
They should be the expectations.
Of course. And that's my expectations. That's why whenever I come on and I express frustration and I sound as if I'm complaining, it's because those are my expectations. Yeah. But it's hard to live up to that. It's hard to be the best, dude. Yeah. That's why these front offices turn over so often.
Yeah. The one thing we didn't talk about, and we're nearing 90 minutes, so we're going to get out of here soon. And I feel like I can, out of here. I feel like I could piss you off since we're this late.
I don't care.
The thing, the one thing we didn't talk about when I was talking about how sometimes they, face pitchers that come in with bad records and stuff like that. It's spaced already because I think I've had to compartmentalize this and block it completely out of my brain. What really, truly might throw me off the edge of this season is that they got carved up, Brendan, by Jose Quintana.
All right, that's it. Goodbye.
I told you.
I didn't know you were going that route. I'm done. Where's the last ad break here?
All of the years that we had to watch that man nibble at the strike zone, 3-2 on every hitter. Just, again, I'm not relitigating the trade. He was a huge part of the reason they win the division, make the playoffs, whatever, in 2017, yada, yada. But toward the end, the lack of attacking the strike zone, the poor starts, et cetera, and in my opinion, and I know you agree with me, excruciating to watch. One of my least favorite pitchers to watch, maybe in the history of baseball. This Cubs team, he came into that game at Wrigley Field with an ERA near 5, a FIP near 5.2, carves up the Chicago Cubs. That might be the thing that drives me completely insane.
You knew it was going to happen, too. I woke up that morning and looked at the projected pitchers. I'm like, is that Jose Quintana? Like, of course that was going to happen. No offense to the guy, but he took years off my life. He really did. Years off my life, Corey. That count got to 2 strikes. I knew damn well he was not striking out that guy.
Yeah,
those curveballs.
Unless he's facing the Cubs, apparently.
Unless he's facing the Cubs. But those curveballs were not going to dip for strikeouts when he was on the Cubs. And, of course, on that day, in the Mets uniform, it happens. Kill me. Absolutely kill me. But it reflects the Cubs so perfectly. In a way, it can be reduced just to that example.
Yes. All right. Last question for you, Brendan, because our
Okay.
chat was talking about it. I'm pretty sure this was started by our guy, Cody Delmendo, but as we approach 90 minutes here, it's a fair question. Favorite Taco Bell item? That was in the chat.
Say it one more time.
The chat was debating Taco Bell items.
I like those. You're frozen over there, by the way. I like those Dorito tacos.
Fair enough.
Were they called the Locos? Or I forgot the name.
Yeah, probably.
Yeah, I like those. That's my thing.
I think Cody eats them after Cubs losses, but I guess he eats them sometimes after good things. I don't know. But
And
anyway.
can't go wrong with just a basic burrito, too. They're like $1.99 there. Can't go
Yeah.
wrong. And those cinnamon things, what I'm talking about? If you had those cinnamon things, those are great. I might go there right now.
Great addition to, I know everybody laments the Wrigleyville neighborhood getting rid of the old Taco Bell, but they did put one back. You need it. There's not a lot of late night food immediately in that area, but I digress.
All right. Well, let's say it's late. You want your Taco Bell. You want a drink to go along with that. Well, guess what? Go get a Blue Moon. Some beers can say they're brewed for baseball, but only Blue Moon is brewed by baseball. I love coming home from a long day and a hot day in the summer, flipping on the baseball game. Hopefully the Cubs are winning, opening up a fresh Blue Moon. There's nothing better. From this refreshing flavor with Valencia orange peel for a subtle sweetness and hints of coriander, Blue Moon Belgian style wheat ale is a one-of-a-kind beer that's made brighter. Bring the ballpark to you with Blue Moon Belgian style wheat ale. It's one of a kind every time. Get Blue Moon delivered by visiting get.bluemoonbeer.com/CHGO to see your delivery options. That's get.bluemoonbeer.com/CHGO. Blue Moon, made brighter, celebrate responsibly. Blue Moon Brewing Company, Golden, Colorado.
All right, Brendan. I don't know, man. Here's, as we were saying,
what's your biggest fear with this team?
My biggest fear is what we watch every day, which if you go back to you and I talking in the off season, I expressed was my biggest fear almost every time we spoke.
Which ends up in what?
Which ends up in this offense is not reliable.
Okay.
It was reliant upon bringing back Cody Bellinger and banking on not him returning to MVP form, but being able to repeat what he did last year, which so far, a 780 OPS, I think is what he was around when the game on Sunday finishes. It's not terrible, but you're paying him to be your big bat, and that's not a big bat at all. And the homer power is not where you would want it to be for him. The known risks are hit or miss. The Morel thing has not worked in terms of results thus far. Michael Busch looks good, but even Michael Busch, still not great. Not an elite hitter that's able to kind of make a stronghold in the middle of your order, and that you didn't do enough to shore up the bullpen,
which results in what?
Which results in what?
Yeah, like missing the playoffs, right?
Oh, well, yeah, blown saves every other game, and ultimately any number of games you could look back on when they missed the playoffs by one game or two games and say, oh, well, they shouldn't have blown that one on Monday against the Giants. They shouldn't have blown this one. It's just frustrating. It's one of those things where we don't always go back to saying that we talked about this in the offseason. I don't care if we're right about stuff. I just want the Cubs to win. We expressed those concerns as the offseason was going on because they were legitimate concerns. We weren't the only people that felt that way. It was a pretty common sentiment. But then you start looking, it gets close to the season, you want to support the boys and hope that it can come together in one of the better standard deviations and higher percentile outcomes.
Nerd.
But it is, I think, even more frustrating to kind of feel like this was definitely possible, express it all the time, and then on a nightly basis have to be like, yep, they lost 3-2 because the offense can't score any runs. They can't drive runners in with scoring position. They can't get that big hit. They don't have enough slug, and the bullpen isn't reliable, so they blew another game. And it's like at certain times it feels like you're taking crazy pills. It's like, yep, I was worried about this in December and January, and it's really frustrating to it seems so obvious to everybody talking about this team that they didn't do enough in certain areas, and we just live it every night. And that's with, Brendan, them, I think, getting a way better than expected performance from their starting staff. We knew that they, Justin Steele would be really good, and they had a lot of potential in that depth, but weren't sure about certain guys. How was Taillon going to look when he came back? How was Shota Imanaga going to adjust and look in his first year in Major League Baseball? And they've been one of the best rotations in baseball, pole to pole, so far this season. And so even hitting at the higher percentile of that portion of the game, for it to be where we are right now, it's just exceedingly disappointing and frustrating. But I don't know. They're 2 games out of a wild card. I don't know. I don't know, man.
My worst fear is shared with yours. My worst fear is that if this happens throughout the season, it increases the chance of another rebuild with a different front office. Ugh. I don't want to go into that uncertainty of
you
Tom
and I
Ricketts.
Aren't surviving that.
We'll see. It might be tough. It makes my comfort with ownership picking the next front office extremely shaky. Theo Epstein's don't grow on trees. Generational executives don't just happen to
Theo Epstein's
come
don't
from
grow
the
on
grass.
trees, and the trees that grow from him might not be that good, is a lesson that people can learn.
But you know what's funny about that? And these are all generalities, but there was a time where Jason McLeod was the next hot shot guy.
Yeah.
Getting interviewed by San Francisco. It was only a matter of time until Jason McLeod got his presidency with a different organization. Never happened. In fact, he's not even in a high executive position anymore. Yeah. Why is that? The sport changed on a dime. And so my worst fear is that the sport is changing as we continue.
It changes all the time.
It changes all the time.
Yeah.
And is ownership in a position to identify the next front office to not just stay afloat on the change, but to in fact promote that change, be one of the changers as Theo was. I don't know if I have that confidence. And so my worst fear is that this is just the tipping point. So I'm still hoping, I'm desperately hoping that Jed's infrastructure, developmental system bears fruit. I am desperately hoping for that, because if that happens, then we can avoid that legitimate worst case scenario. That's dark. That's how you get super dark. You think this could be worse? Oh, just wait.
Yeah. Well, I mean, look, I think like I felt, looking back on it, when they were finishing that series in Tampa, I said I thought we'd learn a lot about this team over this 9-game homestand. And I think we did. I think what we learned is that the play we've seen for the last 2 months or so, outside of some good play at the beginning of the year, et cetera, is where this team is. It's one of those things. We can look at so many guys, and we have. Yes, Cody is correct. The good news is we'll all be dead at some point anyway. The sun could engulf us all at any moment. The Cubs have won a World Series in our lifetimes. If it's time to go, it's time to go, everybody. That's my philosophy.
Hey, it's not a bad way of looking at it.
But I think
cool.
Dan Chambers in the YouTube chat says he's Ryne's nephew. Parents were singing with him in the box, take me out to the ballgame. That's very cool. Thanks for hopping in the chat.
Dan Chambers is jacked, by the way, too. Can Dan Chambers back cleanup?
Yeah. Hopefully a wonderful weekend and night.
Thank you to your uncle.
Yeah, Dan. For your family. As Pat Foley used to say, hope you enjoyed the broadcast and the game and the statue unveiling in spite of the outcome that the Cubs gave on the field. But I think we did learn a lot in this 9-game homestand. And that is, that this is kind of who this team is until they show us otherwise. You can always look at certain guys and say there's room for improvement. Cody Bellinger, there's a good discrepancy between the results that he put up last year and where he is right now. If he got back there, of course, that would be great. Be a lift to the offense. We saw Ian Happ do that, and he vaulted those numbers up in, pretty short order. He got them up. Dansby Swanson can do that. Nico Horner, as soon as he's not playing through a fractured bone in his hand. Maybe he can get back and start putting up those numbers again. We talked about Seiya. We've talked about Christopher Morel. We've talked about these things. But at the end of the day, it seems clear that they are going to play as we all feared. A lot of close games. They don't have a very good bullpen. They have an unreliable bullpen. And their offense very frequently, almost every day, is going to put this pitching staff in a position where they cannot afford that volatility in the bullpen. They cannot afford the compounded issues to the starting staff as a result of many different things, injuries, short starts, et cetera, et cetera. And it's going to be a lot of coin flips. Does that ball that Estrada hit leave the yard on Monday off Neris? Does he make one better pitch to get out of the inning? Does the offense drive in that one extra run from third base? And as we spent all last year talking about, it's all margins. All these little tiny things that you desperately try to avoid affecting the season and affecting every night. They're going to affect the season and affect things every night. Well, every little tiny thing.
That's why I zone in on those tiny things. Like, how pathetic am I? Like, it's truly sad how many graphs I make. Is it not? It's legitimately sad. I have to squint to find these trends when making these graphs. And like, for example, this is how pathetic I am, okay? I'm watching Dansby Swanson hit, and I'm thinking, all right, he's looking better. There's got to be a reason for this, right? And so, like, I'm looking at his mechanics. This is how pathetic I am. And I noticed these, like, small changes. On the left is from May. On the right is from his home run a couple days ago. And you see these, like, small little changes, his weight distributions change. You can see that by the red area under the curve. And then you start to look at, okay, let's line that up with his bat speed. When he did that, all of a sudden his bat speed keeps going up and up and up. Bat speed the best at any point in the season right now. And so I'm trying to find those, like, you think the Cubs are playing on the margins? I'm playing on the margins for my optimism. I'm playing on the margins for my mental sanity over here. I don't want to be doing this. I don't want to be making graphs like this, Corey. I just want to be a 100-win team. It's a simple ask. That's all.
Apparently not a simple ask at all.
I'm just saying, why can't we win 100 games? That's all.
I don't know, man. It is what it is. Like I said earlier, I know people don't, you got to square the conversation. I'm not lowering my threshold to just take that third wild card spot. But when they're 2 games out, like I said, whether you think they could get in the playoffs and actually compete with anybody, it doesn't matter. If they're 2 games out, they're not going to sell.
But you know what? You're sick because you believe it. Like, you're holding on to that 2 games out of the wild card spot for your own mental sanity, because it could happen.
Kind of.
I mean, I know you are. But I know you are.
But that's what I mean. It's not. It's you and I try to talk through the lens of what the front office is actually going to do. What's going to happen in reality.
Yeah.
I always say that, where it's like, I wish they would spend $500 million on their payroll. They're not going to.
But that possibility keeps you alive. It keeps you happy.
Well,
I know it does. Even though you kind of hate
it. But it also does center a lot of these conversations. If they are within striking distance of a playoff spot, I just don't see them selling. I don't see them not making decisions to try and take that playoff spot.
We're weeks away, but I'm kind of curious to like probe your thinking right now. If they are 2 games out of the wild card and like 3 games below 500 on July 29th, are they making trades to go over that luxury tax? What do you think? 2 games out, 3 games under 500.
I don't know. I really don't.
If you had to bet,
I think they might. Yeah.
That's unbelievable if they do that.
Dude, there's 40,000 people in the stadium. I just can't see them selling. And I do want to say,
unbelievable if they do that.
I do want to say, like, Diehard Cub 1984 says, Corey, you're sounding more like an owner than a fan. I got to clear that up. You
kind of are.
Get out of here.
Look at you.
My standard is not making a wild card spot. I have talked all the time about how, like, following what the Diamondbacks did last year and trying to sneak in and hope that you can win the World Series and using that as a justification to be in the middle and just hope you can make the playoffs is not good enough for the Chicago Cubs. It's not good enough at all. I just spent 5 minutes talking about how they need to be the standard bearer of their own division, and they're not even close to that. So I am not justifying it. I am not okay with them using a third wild card spot as their threshold of success. It's not good enough for the Chicago Cubs. But when they're 2 games out, for you and I to come on here and talk, sell this guy, trade this guy, I don't think that reflects the reality of how the team is going to operate. And I think it's a disservice for you and I to talk any other way.
I'm with you. I'm just poking fun.
You're making fun of me.
Yeah. I am making fun of you, but I don't want it. I mean, I guess I am doing it now, but it's still far away. But what makes you believe truly? What makes you believe they trade and pay more money on this roster by starting that cycle, by starting that tax cycle?
How much space do they have?
Like $5 million or so.
Yeah, I mean, I think I might agree with our guy Cody. Like I think I think it would be similar to last year where they buy, but not in a meaningful way.
So if you look at their current expected...
Well, and that's the other thing, as Mark says in the YouTube chat, like they don't have a lot of guys that are geared to
So they
sell.
are legitimately on the nose, $5 million under that threshold by cuts.
Yeah. So I mean, I think it definitely would be possible you try to bring in cheap relief help.
So the same thing
like
they did last year.
Yeah. Well, that wasn't selling.
Yeah, I know. They're not selling.
I'm not arguing for it.
Yeah,
Again, I'm just trying to
sell.
like figure out what I think they're going to do. If it were all up to me, if you're asking me what I want them to do, what I think they should do.
What would Corey Friedman, the owner, do?
I would have gone back at least 2 off seasons ago and done a lot of different stuff.
Would Chris Bryant still be on this team?
Probably. Yeah. And I'd have to eat that guy. No, I don't know.
Well, he'd be healthy if that were the case. That Denver air, by the way, to our good friends at DNVR, no offense, I can't breathe in that state and city. The altitude's crazy. I go for a half-mile walk. My neck hurts. I can't breathe. The altitude's a huge factor.
I don't know. It's a bit of a mess because, as we were just saying, like they're not particularly well suited to sell. You could find some things to sell.
No, they're not going to sell. There's no way. If they're 2 games out, they'll just do exactly what they did last year.
Yeah, soft buy. We'll call it a soft buy.
We'll get Jose Cuas back from the Blue Jays, Corey. We'll trade Canario for Jose Cuas.
Yeah.
Imagine that. Now that would be funny. That would be funny.
I don't know, man. Yeah, get Cuas back. Get Jake Slaughter back from Seattle.
Yeah. Just trade Tyson Miller back.
See if they.
Healthy.
Yeah.
Our friend Gary would love that.
Yeah. So. As I said, I think we did learn a lot from this team in this 9-game homestand, and I think we'll learn more in this stretch as we march toward July. As I said, you know they're probably on a plane already. They have a night game in San Francisco tomorrow. 3 8:45 starts Monday through Wednesday, and then the finale at 2:45 on Thursday, and then 3 in Milwaukee. So you have a full 7-game road trip with no off days. Then you're off the following Monday to start the month of July. And then you welcome the Phillies to town. So this is a tough stretch, man. And for not taking advantage of that 9-game homestand, now you have to, it's sort of put up or shut up time against better competition. I mean, this is a tough road trip. You just won a series against the Giants, but now you're traveling out there. You're changing time zones. 4 games on the road, and then you're going to Milwaukee and then welcoming one of the best teams in the National League in the Philadelphia Phillies.
Okay. It's okay. Don't worry. It's going to be okay.
It's fine. It's fine.
They just need to be stressed out. Bring in the best teams, increase the stress, and they'll be fine. That's what it is.
All right.
They just have to try harder, Corey.
Right.
They'll be okay.
Right. Yeah. That's, I think, what we got for you guys. Almost 2 hours tonight.
It's our longest episode in history, dating back to 2015.
Yeah. It's working through it, Brendan. I mean, I think part of the frustrating brand of baseball they play is it does, you described it as purgatory. It does sort of leave you in a weird state of like, I don't really know what to do with
But
myself.
at least it's not hell. Like, I'll stay in purgatory instead of going to hell. Hell is like, it really falls off the rails.
Which is
here.
what, like the White Sox, like what they deal with?
Yeah, I mean, you have guys continue to underperform. You have to sell. Front office is turned over. You get back a front office that sucks. Yada yada yada. 20 years from now, was worse, and that's hell. And then there's no coming out of that. Then you have to sell the team again, like the Tribune did, and then you gotta get the next Theo Epstein. Maybe his kid is an executive. You hire Theo Epstein's kid.
Yeah.
John Lester's kid pitches for the Cubs. That's what happens.
Sure.
Off the rails.
Yeah. I think that's what we got for you. It is just a weird spot, though. The brand of baseball they play does leave you kind of with a, like, I don't know, man. I don't know what to feel about this team on a daily basis. But disappointing homestand, 4-5 on this homestand. Drop a series to the Cardinals, drop a series to the Mets. Did win 2 out of 3 against the Giants, who now you head out to San Francisco to try to play. And Brendan and I will be back with you next Sunday to try to make sense of it all. Tough week.
Honestly, I want a brawl. I want a
Cubs.
full-out brawl. I want PCA, charge the mound, cover the face, make sure everything's okay, no injuries. Charge your mound and go ballistic. Full-out brawl. I want Counsell to get in there, take his dip out, go full throttle. I need something, Corey. I need to feel alive.
We do. It does feel like we need one of those, like, the Cubs are 12-3 since fill in the blank. Yeah.
Right. Not Grimace, but the brawl.
We don't have Grimace. Yeah,
we need like Anthony Rizzo 2.0. That's what we need. Go to the Reds dugout, scream at Chapman or something like that. That's how it happens.
The Cubs are 15-1 since Craig Counsell fought Bob Melvin in San Francisco.
Oh, he would kick Bob Melvin's ass, dude. I think Counsell still has it.
All right.
They should hire Carlos Zambrano back. That's what they should do. Quality control.
Quality control.
Quality control.
Great.
Yeah.
All right, folks. Like I said, appreciate you guys tuning in. Long show. And after a Sunday night baseball game. So as I said, I appreciate you guys choosing to prolong your 2024 Chicago Cubs experience by joining Brendan and I here on the CHGO Cubs podcast. Don't forget, tune in Luke, Cody, Ryan throughout the week. They'll have you covered. And you got to tune in. Luke, you guys know he's going to have to stay up so late for these San Francisco games. Make sure you hit the like button for him. Tune into the show. Make it worthwhile for him.
What time's the game tomorrow?
8:45 in Chicago. 6:45 for you. Yeah.
Perfect.
So don't forget to tune in. We appreciate your support very much. Appreciate you guys tuning in. Brendan and I will talk to you next week. See what they got. Let's see if they have it in them to pull together a nice road trip here after a disappointing homestand. So Brendan and I will talk to you next Sunday. Thank you guys for your support. And as always, go Cubs.
We all silly like the mayor.